Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. And yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit about the life, but also we'll see that the life is too short. That's why we will discuss about this tonight. And what a great introduction that we had with the... When you're talking about life, we think of something, and we have to think of what is life. That would be the first question that we would have. What are we? Where we come from? What are we doing here? Do we have a mission? And that's interesting because I don't know if you guys have already asked yourselves about these questions, which are kind of simple. But what are we? What are we doing here? What is our objective? Do we have any mission or something? Because when we're thinking about life, we just think of something like that. You're born, you grow up, older, go to the school, university, find a job, retire, get old, pass away. That's life. But life, we'll see, it's way more than that. And it's something bigger. It's not something that, just pass through and that's it, gone. But when you're talking about life, we also have to talk about creation. We have to talk about creation because then we'll answer one of the questions. We will see that we'll answer the question, what are we? And Kardec made the same question. On the question 78 of the Spirit's book, Kardec asked, have spirits had a beginning, or have they existed like God from all eternity? Because sometimes we think about what are we and how long ago we've been created, or for how long we've been on the universe, in other words. And the spirits say, if the spirits had not had a beginning, they would be equal with God, whereas they are His creation and subject to His will. That God has existed from all eternity is incontestable, but as to when and how He created us, we know nothing. So that shows us that we had a beginning. All of us, every single one here, had a beginning. But we don't know when it happened. We don't exist from all eternity because otherwise we'll be just like a little bit of like God, or one of the qualities of God, which is eternal. We had a beginning, but we don't have an end, which is different. But how, when, we know nothing. And if these spirits didn't tell us back in the day, it's because it's not important as well. And then we're talking about ourselves as a spirit. We also talk about material life. And then we are talking about our bodies. At this moment, we're going to talk about the body. Before we were talking about the soul. And I didn't put the question here that God created us simple and ignorant, but He created us all the same. We all had the same start, but we might differ on the way to reach the same end, which is the perfection. But to go through, we're going to talk a little bit more. But material life, I found it on Wikipedia. The biological life definition, it's a little bit controversial. The current definition is that organisms are open systems that maintain homeostasis, are composed of cells, have a life cycle, undergo metabolism, can grow, adapt to their environment, respond to stimuli, reproduce, and evolve. We have a doctor here. It's kind of material definition of life. So that's what our body is. Our body has a cycle. Our body, we reproduce. We interact with the environment. Our body changes depending on the environment. That's why we have different races in the world. You see, you have different people in Africa, in Asia, in Europe. Every one of these races, the body was adapting to its conditions, and that's why we can see it. And one interesting thing on the next slide, it's how long ago the biological life has been appeared in the world, and it's the world, first of all, has 4.54 billion years. That's what they can measure nowadays. The formation of the oceans, 4.41 billion. And life started just soon after, in 4.28 billion of years. So see how long ago the material or the biological life has appeared in the world. It's long ago. And just another curiosity that I brought here for us is that on the Gospel we can find in chapter 3, which is "There are many dwellers in my Father's house." He puts that in worlds which have reached a superior level, the moral and material state is very different from that which exists on earth, as everywhere the form is always human. I put this underlined, but it is more beautiful, more perfect, and above all else purified. So we're talking about the human form, right? It doesn't mean that in different worlds we'll be seeing another human just like us, right? With a body made by flesh, by blood, by bones. But the idea is the form, the human form. And when we're talking about human form, we can talk about the dogs. You see the dogs, there are many different species of dogs. One little ones, some big, huge. But you can see, you look at them and then you say, oh, that's a dog. You recognize that's a dog. So that's the idea of the human. So everywhere it's the human form. But we also have to talk about the spiritual life. As you can see, that's just a photo of the movie Nosso Lar, or Our Home, for those who watched the movie. Because it's important for us to talk about the spiritual life. Because, as we can see here, on the Spirit's book, on the question 85, because we know that Allan Kardec was so curious and he had a really good curiosity. Which of the two, the spirit world or the corporeal world, is the principal one in order of the universe? And I guess you guys would know this answer, but the Spirit says the spirit world. It is pre-existing to and will survive everything else. So no matter what happens here, it's not gonna finish with the spiritual world, because it's pre-existing. It was already there before we even be here. So it's important to keep this question in mind, because just ahead we'll see some other things related to this question. So, talking about the spiritual life, we have to talk about incarnation. And then we start getting close to what matters for us. So, what is the aim of the incarnation of the spirits? It's a question 132. God imposes incarnation for the purpose of leading spirits to perfection. Remember, we said we have the same start and we will have the same end, but the way that we go is different. For some, it is an expiation, for others, a mission. However, in order to reach this perfection, they must undergo all the vicissitudes of corporeal existence. Therein lies their expiation, because the body is heavy. The body is not something light that you just, wear and you'll be fine. It's something that you have to take care. It's something exposed to the change of the environment, to the heat, to the cold. It's something really fragile. And that's interesting when they put, just by being here, and exposed to the vicissitudes of corporeal existence, it's already some sort of expiation. Because on the spiritual life, life is happy. Incarnation also has a third objective. So we're talking about objective, which is to place the spirits in condition where they can do their share in the work of creation. So we are working for the Creator. We're working. When we work, when we do our activities, we are helping to evolve the world, make the world a better place. Imagine 200 years ago, 300, how hard it was, like communication, transport, medicine, like we hardly have enough medicine, but today the life lasts longer. And we have to do our part for the creation. It's not that God is perfect, we know that. It's not that God will do all the job for us. No, we have to do our share. And that's why it's important working. On each world, they clothe themselves with the instrument which is in harmony with the essential matter of their world, in order to execute in that instrument the orders of God, in which way, while contributing to the general work, they progress at the same time. So we're not just helping, we evolve as well, just by being useful, by work, helping others, being charitable. And incarnation, that's pretty much what we could see. What about reincarnation? And then we go to the question 166. How can the soul that has not reached perfection during its corporeal life complete the work of its purification? By submitting to the trial of a new existence. So if you come to this world, we incarnate. And if in that incarnation we cannot reach our perfection, we submit ourselves to another reincarnation. And so then on until we reach what? The perfection. And then another question, how does the soul accomplish this new existence? Is it through its transformation as a spirit? In order to purify itself, the soul undoubtedly undergoes a transformation, but for this to occur, it needs the trial of corporeal life. So here, we can see that for reasons that we still probably don't know, God chose that this environment, the material body, the incarnation, is the way that we have to go through to reach the perfection. Why? He could choose something different. Yeah, he could, but that's what we have to do to reach our perfection. We have to go through the trial of corporeal life. But we might find an answer why, because we know that's not that easy. There is its challenge. All the things that we have to go through. And then 167, this question: what is the purpose of reincarnation? Expiation and humankind's progressive improvement. Without reincarnation, where would justice be? So, the reincarnation has another purpose. It serves as instrument for God to apply its perfect justice. And then we see many things explained in our daily lives, things that happens to someone that doesn't happen to others. People that has, sounds like all the doors open for them, but for others, sounds like that all the doors closed for them. But this is no more than the justice of God. And here we get to a really interesting point when we're talking about time. Because that's what we're talking about, right? Life is too short. So we're talking about time. But we know, do we actually know what time is? Not that one. I mean, in a more deep explanation or conception. What time? What is time? To be honest, before this lecture, I haven't thought about it. But it never came to my mind to say, what is actually time? But there is someone that been through to this question, and you guys know him. He is Allan Kardec. And on the book Genesis, he talks a little bit about time. But just before this, he talks a little bit about the universe, which is really interesting to read. So let's just start. Let's see if we can understand a little bit of it, because it's a little bit more like philosophical, scientific way of talking about time. He says, he takes us through this journey. Let us imagine we are at the beginning of our earth, in that first epoch in which it had not yet moved under the divine impulse. It is at the beginning of Genesis. Time has not yet left the mysterious cradle of nature, and no one can say what age we are in, because the pendulum of time has not yet set in motion. So, what time is that? When the earth started, there was no time before that, right? But silence, the first hour of a lonely earth sounds at the eternal bell. The planet begins to move through space, and from then on, there are evening and morning. Beyond the earth, eternity remains impassive and unmoving, although time has been marched steadily forward on other worlds. On the earth, however, time replaces eternity. And over a given series of generations, one will count the years and centuries. So, now we're going back. The earth didn't appear yet. The earth that was being created. And until it starts going around the sun, there was no time. There was just the eternity. And that's an interesting way for us to understand it, because before, it was just the eternity. And then we're talking about eternity, we imagine something that doesn't have end. But it's something that also, and then we cannot situate ourselves in that. But as soon as the earth starts going around the sun, we have a time. How long does the earth take to go around the sun? You guys know that. Oh, 1 year. I thought we were going to talk about the days. But yeah, 1 year, which is just a little bit more than 365, right? So before there was no time. But now we have evenings. we have day, light, and we have this too, so then we can, you know, have a reference, you know. So now we have time. We have one day, one night, and that becomes one day. We still call one day, although it's made by half day, half night, or roughly that. Both under, he carries on, both under the weight of old age, it will be erased from the book of life, never to appear again. Here, the chain of events stops. Terrestrial movements that measure time cease, and time ends with it. Time is but a relative measure of the sequence of transitory things. For eternity, the present, it all there is. So, and I think it's interesting because he wasn't just a teacher, he was a philosopher. You can see by the way he's expressed himself. So one day, in another 4.5 billion, Earth will be dissipated. And what will be here in our solar system? It will be eternity again, where all the spiritual world that stays will be living the eternity, not the time, because he says time is a sequence of transitory things. The sun will perish one day, the earth will go with it, and then how are we going to measure time? How are we going to say that's 1 year now passed if you don't know how many evenings, how many days has gone? So for the spirit, as you can see here, for the eternity, all that matters is the present. And even time, when you're talking about time, this guy here says that time, we could see that time is event of transitory things, it's a sequence. But this guy here, he shows that beyond that, time is relative. The relativity of time. And look at that. How simple, after all his, intellectual development, scientific knowledge, doing all his math and all his physics, he shows us that the relativity of time is just like this simple phrase. When you are coaching an ice scale, an hour seems like a second. When you sit on a red hot cinder, a second seems like an hour. That's relativity. And that's important for us because the time, although we have the time, we have 1 day, 1 night, and becomes a week, become a month, a year, it's still relative. And now you guys can start thinking about life, right? Life, time, relative, what is time? And then we have life is too short. But how can we talk about life, when we don't talk about a lifetime? Another sequence of transitory things. That's missing some parts there, but that's alright. See? Life is just this, we will end up in this situation. But lifetime, let's go. Worldwide, it's an average of 74 years for women, for females, 70 years for males. I found this information at Status 2018. But here, there is a little reference for you. 74 years. It's about 27,000 days. Someone will think that's a long day. Oh, 27,000 days. How long does it take a year to go through? And then we go back to Einstein? Depends. Depends, what you did, what you were doing. And then lifetime, but we have also the spiritual life, as we could see. When you're talking about lifetime, one important aspect to remember is the future life. That's really important for us. We will see on the gospel why it's important. Because it looks like, after seeing this lecture, it looks like the gospel and Einstein were together at some point. But what is important? Why do you guys think it's important to think about the future life? Anybody? Why is it important for us to think of the future life? Maybe because this life is transitory. As you could see, what is times? Event of transitory things. On the Gospel, on the chapter 2, my kingdom is not of this world, there is one subtitle that's really important, which is called The Point of View. And on this item, Kardec says, the clear and precise idea that one holds of the future life provides an unshakable faith in the future. This faith carries enormous consequences for the moralization of human beings because it completely changed the point of view from which they consider earthly life. For those who through their thought place themselves in the spiritual life, which is limitless, corporeal life is no more than a passage, a brief stay in an ungrateful country. So see how life changed now? We were talking a little bit about, life is sometimes not that easy. Life is a little bit hard. You have, to take care of your body. You have to work. You have to sleep. You're not just go. You get sick. You have to look after someone, and so then on. But what is important for us that will change all of these is the point of view. More we place ourselves in the future life, but this, remember, is not trying to live just for the future. We cannot forget the present. But it's the certainty that we have of the future life. If we go through all of these, that's what gives us this strength, this faith, this unshakable faith. And then he says, the vicissitudes and tribulations of life are no more than incidents which they bear with patience, because they know that they are only of short duration, and that they must be followed by a happier state. Death no longer has anything terrifying about it, and it is no longer a door to nothingness, but rather the deliverance that opens to the exile the entryway to a dwelling place of happiness and peace. So we're not going to fear death anymore, because death is a passage to a happier state. And the vicissitudes and tribulations of life, that's what we could see before the incarnation. We have to go through the vicissitudes of corporeal existence. But if we have this unshakable faith, we go through them easier. We're not going to look to a rich person and say, I wanted to have, if I had the same money, I would be more charitable. Or someone that, is intelligent. And then we look and say, if I were intelligent, I would use this for the humankind. And so then on. But there is one thing. The doubt about the future life. And that's really important. Because on the same item, due to the mere doubt regarding the future life, people direct all their thoughts towards the earthly life, uncertain of the future. They give everything to the present. And is it good? When we imagine that, okay, this is my only life. That's all I have. And then we go back because we see that we were created a long time ago. How many years? Maybe 100 years? Thousands? Maybe millions? Maybe even billions? We don't know. But if we imagine that we were created just now, if I were created now, on this lifetime, what should I do? Because I have no perspective. It's just like when you find a new job, that you don't have perspective of growing the company. What do you want to do in that company? You know, just stay there doing the same work for forever? No, you always want to improve. You always want to get something better. And that's the certainty that we have to know that, to do not fall in these. They are like children who can see nothing beyond their toys. There is nothing they would not do to obtain them. And there you go. There we see all the crimes that happen. Because people put too much attention to the present life. And they imagine that's all they have. They forget that we are spirits in a journey. Or maybe some of them don't even know or have a smaller idea than we have. A disappointment, frustrated hope, an unsatisfied ambition, an injustice of which they are the victim, wounded pride or vanity are also torments that make their life a perennial agony. And in this way, they intentionally cause themselves true torment at every moment. Imagine we believe in this situation, you know, facing different things every day as we do. You know, someone cutting in front of us, we will get late somewhere, we will get upset. You know, some workmate that makes problems for us. Imagine if we keep thinking that that's the only life we have. Oh, I have to be happy now. And then I'll do everything that I need to be happy. But we, as spiritists, we know that we're not going to be truly happy on this world, because this is still material world, and we are early steps of evolution. We're just migrating from or changing from expiation and trial planet to a regenerative world. So it's still little. Still lots to learn. And I think it's interesting because all of these you can find in the Gospel. Those who identify themselves with the future life are like rich. Remember that rich person that we said? Rich person who loses a small sum without being disturbed by it. Those who concentrate their thoughts on the earthly life are like a poor person who loses everything he or she owns and becomes desperate. So see how Kardec goes deep on this explanation. It's just like if we put our point of view in the right place on a future life, knowing that we are here to improve, we will be like this rich person. And we will know that everything that comes to us, it's all landed. God puts in our hands. It's not like, oh, I got that because I deserve it or because I owned it. No, it's because God gives you the chance to try yourself, to see what we're going to do with that, to see if you're going to be a good care. You take good care of it. Just like the parable of the talents that he puts in our hands, to see what we're going to do with it. And so knowing that we don't have anything, nothing is ours, because when we go, when we return to the spiritual world, everything stays, right? What we carry with us, the good seeds that we did, but also the bad ones as well, not just the good ones. So, as we start talking about objective of life, how can we adjust our conduct? Who to follow? Where to go? What to do? And then we go to this. Humankind guides. Simple. We had Moses. He came about, let's say, about 600 years before Christ. So he came in a period that we were still too young on evolution. We were too barbaric. And he came with the 10 Commandments, preparing the planet to receive Jesus. So we also have Jesus to follow all his teachings. Although he spoke through parables, we can still understand a little bit what he meant. But if it's not enough, we still have Spiritism. We still have Spiritism. Jesus sent us the Spiritism. And remember when we said that the first reading we had, when Emmanuel says that we already have all the truths and all revelations that we need for thousands of years. So, there you go. So we had Moses, Jesus, and Spiritism, and that's it. Now it's up to us, how we're going to lead our lives, how we're going to see, through which point of view we're going to see our lives. And if it's not enough, we go to Spiritism as an example of conditions of those who realize too late in life their objective. So we see many people going through this. In the last moments they realize, things that they didn't know before. Experience, however, on the Gospel, blessed are the afflicted, on the item 5, experience, however, sometimes arrives a bit late, after life has already been wasted in trouble, after strength has already been spent, and after evil no longer has a remedy. Then the person will say, if only at the beginning of my life I had known that I know today, how many wrongs I would have avoided. So we're talking about going back in the past, which is not possible. As Chico says, we cannot go back in the past and change, but we can change now and make a different end. I would do everything different, but there is no more time left. Like the lazy worker who says, I have wasted my day, he or she likewise says, I have wasted my life. And what is life? It's a transitory thing, remember? And a life gives us that time, 27,000 days on average. Is that the end? Not for us. Because we know that life never ends. The corporeal one does. One day, when I reach my 27,000 days, Lucas will be gone. But my spirit will carry on. And so for all of us here. And seeing all of these, I'm pretty sure that you guys are already thinking about, oh, when he's going to talking about, oh, life is too short. Well, we're probably not going to even talk about it, because the idea is bring to you this reflection of life. But we're not finished yet. In the same chapter, Kardec says, nonetheless, just as the sun rises the next day for the worker, and a new day begins that allows him or her to make up for the lost time, so also after the night after the grave, the sun will shine with a new light, making it possible to take advantage of the experience of the past and make good resolutions for the future. So we know that that person that realized too late, maybe they didn't realize too late. They realized in the right time, because we all know that every single one has a different time. Every single one of us, there is a different lifetime. Some will live 70, some will live 80, some will live 110. Some will just go in an early infancy. Depends on the luggage that everyone carries. And yeah. So now, taking all of these that we see tonight to reflect about our lives, we will realize that the life is too short. Because when we were talking about the creation of the planet, billions of years, there was no time. But now just because we have time doesn't mean that this time is long. Maybe this time is just enough for what we need. And this, it's something that's really important for us, being spiritists. When we see, when we're talking about spiritism coming to help us, and it does. And how can we recognize the spiritists? And the Gospel already said, Kardec already said on the Gospel according to Spiritism, on the chapter 17, item 4, good spiritists. True spiritists are recognized by the moral transformation and the efforts they make to overcome their evil inclinations. And now that we know this, how we recognize the true spiritists, we will see that improvement, we will see that perfection takes time. It's not something that we achieve, in one lifetime, as we see. It's not through one incarnation. It's through many reincarnations. And then we will see that we need a lot of time to improve ourselves. And the period of a lifetime is too small. But even though this little time that we have for our material life, what will make it longer or shorter is the point of view, how we live it. Because if we try to use all the possibilities that we have in our daily lives to improve ourselves, we will see that life goes fast. Soon you wake up, you're already going to sleep again. Soon you wake up, going to sleep again, you're already halfway through. And soon you'll be towards the end of the line. Because life is fast. But if the life is too too long, it's dragging along. Maybe it's because the point of view that we're taking is not the point of view of the future life. Because we know that the future life will come. But what is important for us is trying to be these guys in our short life. And that's pretty much what I have to talk with you guys tonight. And I hope you guys have a good, enjoy your time. Although it's too small, too short, or too fast. Now I think we open for questions, comments, and you guys can feel free to do any contribution, any question. We still have time.
Do we?
Yeah. A couple of minutes, 5 minutes.
Just a couple of things that, while you were talking, kind of came to my mind. Very trivial things, nothing very deep. But I was watching a program on TV, one of those trivial programs on TV, and it's called, what amazed me, asking what planet has a day longer than the year, which means the rotation of that planet is slower than the orbit around the sun. And it was Venus.
Venus.
So Venus moves in this rotation so slow that it takes 1 year to complete 1 day. Talking about time, it's time with Venus is different,
Yeah, 1 year's reference for that planet to go around the sun, right?
Yeah.
Because each one goes in different speed as well.
Yeah. Relative. Yeah, it's all relative, yeah. And something else that came to my mind, it's not trivial, but it's kind of funny. There is this story that I've heard a few people telling this, but the last one that I heard was Rivaldo saying that and not an anecdote, but it's like a story that somebody becomes enlightened and they have the opportunity to meet God. And let's pretend that God is a person, right? So he goes, oh God, you are eternal, like you were there from the beginning, you will be there at the end, so you must be really old. How much is 200 billion years for you? It's like, oh, just 1 second. Wow, and you created everything, so you must be really wealthy. You're so rich. How much is $200 billion for you? Oh, it's 1 cent. Oh God, can I have 1 cent? Oh, wait for 1 second. It's all relative.
Yeah. So yeah, all relative. So if you live your life with the hand on a red hot pan, yeah, you certainly will have a really hard life, and really long, according to Einstein. Yep, that's it. Thank you guys. Thanks for